Hi, I'm Kerry Lyons of The Imperfect Life, and I am here to help you create the life that you want whilst also living the messy adventure of creating it. And I am here today with the absolute goddess that is Bex Walker of Bex
Oh,
First Empires, as we were just saying. Just all round warrior queen. Hello, Bex.
hi, how are you doing?
So good, and thank you so crazy much for coming as the Imperfectionista of the month. It's just
Thanks
like
for having me.
coolest honor ever. And yeah, Bex and I kind of have a mutual Kickstarter connection. So we started talking on Instagram, but more around before Bex did her killer Kickstarter campaign last year. And yeah, she absolutely killed it. So I would love anyway, Bex, tell everyone who might not know you, like just a little bit about you, what you do, and the empire.
Okay. Oh gosh, so much to know. So my name is Bex Walker. I own a vegan whole food breakfast company called Bex First, which is basically cake for breakfast. I was massively addicted to cake when I was pregnant with my daughter, who is now nearly 8, which is
Wow.
insane. And yeah, I just wanted to find a way to cut out like actually eating cake and curb the cravings. By eating like whole foods, so it was like doing good for my body but tasting like it should be bad for me. And then it just kind of became a business by accident. People on Instagram wanted to buy it, and it kind of just grew from selling them at a friend's boot camp, getting into a few shops, delivering around London with like the breakfast pots in like a suitcase and dropping them off at like underground stations in London. Then winning London's Hottest Food Entrepreneur, and then doing this big Kickstarter campaign at the end of last year. So we've just moved the business out of my little flat into a real life kitchen, which is amazing. So finally,
Yeah, it's
little
huge.
family house.
Yeah, so it literally just started as you kind of feeling inspired to just make healthy cake as a version of that was for vegans, and it was some kind of like whole food solution for it. And you were just posting pictures and sharing that on your own like personal page. And someone's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I need that. How do I get that?
And to be honest with you, it really wasn't ever meant to be a business. So it wasn't like I was presenting it in that way. It was just, me at home. My Tyler was very young at the time, and I was just and doing like really. I don't know if you ever remember Flipagram. It was like where you could
Yeah.
take look. Yeah, I kind of used to do like little recipe Flipagram. So like you just see like what I was using. It was very basic, very poor lighting. Um, and yeah, but I think because it was always very honest and very real, and I think because I wasn't doing that whole thing where people start a business on Instagram and try to make it look like super professional, whatever, it was just very much my everyday life. And I think, people saw a lot of our family life and things we were up to, and I think we just kind of warmed to it. And somebody, I used to just hashtag it. So this is back when hashtags were even like a brand new thing. And I tagged it like breakfast by Bex. And then after a few months, somebody was like, you have to call it Bex First because it's just like makes sense. And I think when we then started hashtagging it Bex First, people just assumed that it was like a product
Yeah,
rather
like a
than
brand. Yeah.
yeah, it had a name, and it just fitted so well. So I probably wouldn't even be doing it if the name hadn't worked so well. But yeah, so it's
Amazing.
yeah,
That's just, yeah, I love kind of stories like where it's almost like it's just an accident. And
yeah,
you just suddenly find yourself here, however many years later, 8 years later, like in your own premises with your own team and going, hang on, when did
yeah,
this even happen?
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's unreal. I mean, I've been doing it for 4 years now. So I started kind of like making them for myself, and like on the healthy food journey before kind of that stuff started happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a little bit unreal. And I think just saying yes, like everything was scary. I've got no background in food or business, and so to start a food business, it was just insane. But just saying yes, listening to what people actually want, I think that's such a key element. Like if they want it, why not? Give it a go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it does, hurrah. So,
Amazing. Totally like amen. Just say
yeah.
yes. It's like the
Yeah.
opposite of the Grange Hill like anthem. of just say no to drugs. It's like, just say yes to opportunities.
You should just say no. But I feel like business, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But just going back a bit, because obviously that is the kind of trajectory from, I guess, just kind of like going on this like success roller coaster that only just seems to be, I mean, there's obviously ups and downs, but you've just kind of gone in this like amazing like upward curve direction. But like the Bex before you're kind of living this like imperfect life as this ultimate imperfectionista, like how were you feeling about yourself, and like how were you in your mindset and your head? Like where was it before this point?
Well, I think I was a singer and songwriter before I had my daughter, and I'd just been offered 2 deals literally the week that I found out I was pregnant. So my life was completely different. And my husband had gone on tour when Tyler was like just a few days old, and then he was kind of like backwards and forwards. And I think it was quite different for me. I wasn't one of those people that had grown up, looking forward to being a mum. I grew up wanting to be a pop star and like, wanting to do all this stuff, and then getting kind of like a taste of that as well. I'd signed some records and like songs were being played on the radio and stuff. And then becoming a mum and like giving up music, I kind of didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. I kind of knew that I didn't really want to go back to music. I'd always kind of been very, just didn't like myself very much. I had grown up with huge like issues with my body, and it was just stopping me doing things, and I wasn't ever able to just relax and enjoy who I was. So when Tyler was like maybe 9 months old, I started running because I'd noticed that all these things were like coming back into play, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is like a brand new female. She's going to learn all these things from me about how to treat your body and like what's right to feel about yourself and whatever. So I just thought, right now I'm gonna change that. So I started running. I got very into running. I like ran everywhere. I'd run to meetings, I'd run to meet my friends, and after the school run, but I loved it. And I think that feeling, it was kind of like the only time I had on my own at that point. And then I got into like looking at food, which is kind of, I guess, where it really started with the business, was that I was looking at what I was eating, which was mostly garlic bread and cake, and thinking, maybe I could do something, maybe I could eat some things that gave me more energy. And then I started to just look at whole foods, and this was before I was vegan, so it wasn't, being vegan was probably not on the agenda at all. I used to think vegans were really weird. And it was only when I got really ill, so I got chronic fatigue, and actually I was at the healthiest I'd ever been. I was physically the fittest I'd ever been. I was eating exceptionally well, and my body just started shutting down. I couldn't use my arms and legs. I couldn't pick up Tyler, which was obviously just heartbreaking because she was so young at the time. I think she was maybe 3 or 4. When that happened, and it lasted for months, and we kept going back to the doctors, and they were like, they thought it was a vitamin D deficiency at first, but no matter how many levels of vitamin D they gave me, which ended up being extreme amounts of vitamin D, nothing changed. And we were actually getting married like not long after, so I was like really determined to be able to walk down the aisle and to be able to enjoy our honeymoon and things like that, and just to be a mum. And like, from being so active to then not being able to stay awake and not being able to, like, I was in a wheelchair on my hen do, it was really, really bad. So then when I went back and I said, look, it's not changing, I've taken all the things you've told me to do, I've slept, I've eaten more meat, I've eaten less meat, I've eaten protein, really high in protein, but I wasn't actually deficient in hardly anything. So so then it was kind of like do or die, really. I just kind of thought, I need to be able to find a way to live with this and live my life, not just succumb to it and give up, because I'd had quite a few people messaging me, because I've always documented my life. So the thing with Instagram that I think's worked really well for me is that no matter whether it's going really well or not so well, I've always kind of made a point of telling that story. And because I hate fake Instagram accounts of people who are living these wonderful, perfect lives, and everybody knows that, like, I know some people that have what on Instagram would be the most wonderful amazing lives, and in real life they're actually very sad, or they're lonely, or they've not got the family life that they talk about. And I think it just feeds into so much like mental health issues, like to feel like you have to do that. And I just thought, you know what, I don't want to do that. I want to be one of the very few that are saying, actually, today was absolutely rubbish. I need to get myself out of this. So that's when I started looking into ways to live with it. And a lot of the people that I read about were plant-based. And so at that point I was like, oh, I'm going to hate it, but I'll give it a go for a month.
I'm going to be one of them.
It. Yeah, you know, like just to tick it up and say, well, I tried it, wasn't for me, it was rubbish. But after like 4 weeks, I had like a lot of, it wasn't like, you know, I wasn't miraculously healed. It was just, I started to have a little bit more energy, and I had a little bit more feeling in my legs. And then after, you know, 3 months, it was more, you know, I was able to walk around. So I picked up Tyler after 6 months. And I just kind of thought, well, this is clearly working. These people obviously were onto something. And now it's been, I think, 4 or 5 years, like maybe 4.5 years I've been vegan now. So, you know, and I rarely have episodes at all, and I would be lying if I said it wasn't a struggle sometimes, especially with the first few years of having it, with like having such a young business that demanded so much of my time. And because at that point, obviously when you're growing a business, you're giving everything, even when the return is not as much. You just want to be everywhere, you want to do everything, you want to serve every customer. And, you know, as well as being a full-time mum, I've always had part-time jobs as well, being a wife, you know, all of these things. It was a real struggle, but it was kind of, I got to the point where I was like, well, either I'm going to give this everything and try my best to work around it, or I'm going to do, I had people messaging me saying that they'd had to give up their jobs, and they'd had to, and I was just like, I don't want to live like that, you know. And I'm not saying that, you know, not for everybody. I don't think it would be as easy as just changing the diet, but, you know, I was determined no matter what it took. And now, you know, like, I can see the signs now, and I'm not stupid. Like, I'm like, okay, this is happening. I need to get to bed and like just spend 2 days in bed or whatever, like very, very chilled. Whereas before I used to just be like, no, I'm going to carry on. I'm going to do it.
Power through.
Yeah. And it's rubbish. So yeah, I can't even remember the question. I'm just babbling about.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. No, this is exactly it. So you basically just, because I was going to ask whether it was like a gradual kind of like realization with yourself that you wanted to change things, or was it like a definitive moment? And it sounds like it was like a moment of like, this is do or die now. I need to get a hold on this, find a way to live with it, and make changes. And that's what, is that how it happened for you then? It was that like whack around the head, bam in the face.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was lucky in the sense that I was already on the health journey. So like I'd already cut out like a few things that would, like refined sugar is very bad for me. So I try my best not to eat any. I really only have it if I'm having like cake, which is very rare now as well. But yeah, refined sugar was one of the big things. So that went first of all, but that was more like I made that decision already just when I was trying to be my healthiest.
Yeah.
Things like dairy milk I'd already cut out. But I think at that point I was so desperate to try anything that I would have just cut everything off, and just given myself a time limit, because I think if you try and cut something off forever, having never done that before, you're almost guaranteed to fail, because you know, it's like when I used to smoke, like it was like I'd always be like, right, that's it, I'm going to stop smoking. And then like give myself this forever of not smoking. Whereas if you broke it down and said, well, this week I'm not going to smoke, well, today I'm not going to smoke, and then tomorrow you make that decision again.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot easier. But yeah, I was lucky to have already made some better decisions for myself, which made it, I think, probably a little bit easier to make more better decisions in the future. But you know, it is definitely tight, and especially when you're frustrated, sometimes all you want to do, I've got quite a destructive personality, I would say, before having Tyler. Like if things weren't happening the way I wanted to, or I felt like life wasn't going very well. I had very distracted, I would drink a lot and I'd want to party all the time, whatever. And I think that's been an unprocessing as well. It's like just learning more about myself, accepting things, moving on from things that have happened. And I think with healthy eating, that often comes hand in hand. Because once you start respecting yourself and respecting your body and feeding yourself rather than just, just being like living a convenience lifestyle. I think with that, it's very easy to push things under the carpet because you're not really giving anything too much thought. But once I started to eat better and feed myself better and, look after myself a bit more, I think it kind of affected everything. I was able to process things and
and it is that, isn't it? I think it's that element of the kindness, being kind to yourself by the choices that you're making for your body. So when you're getting to a place to like respect your body, respect yourself as a person, it's so much more. It's so much easier, isn't it, to make these kind of decisions when it kind of felt like always like this uphill battle when you're trying to like approach these things with a sense of like obligation or criticism, like I'm too fat or I don't fit in these clothes or whatever it is like that you feel is like the problem. And when you're approaching it from a fact of like, I actually want to do something nice for myself. I want to make myself feel good. I want to have the strength to walk down the aisle or, have that honeymoon that I'm dreaming of and that kind of thing. And it's the same like thing. It's the same goal, but just the like perspective has shifted.
Definitely. Yeah. 100%.
So like, this is just a beautiful story. I love your story. It's so cool. So like, is there anything that you wish you would have known back then that you know now that might have kind of like made it either a swifter process or an easier process, or I don't know, that's helped you kind of sustain yourself longer?
I think one of the things, and this would be quite funny for you to say, but I would say listen to my husband more because he was right about a lot of things a lot of the time, and I was just like, or this would go for anyone who's given you good advice, but you might not be ready to hear it. Because sometimes, especially if you're creative, you have these ideas and you think you kind of know the best way to do things. And I think it's great. Like, so for me, I love to experiment. I'll have an idea and I'm impulsive and I want to put it out. I don't want to wait until everything's perfect and whatever. I just want to whack it out and see how the world feels about it. If they love it, we'll work on, making it perfect. If not, then you haven't wasted time and money, ruined. But so listening to my husband, he's always got very good ideas about things, and learning a bit more of like the business side of things earlier on would probably have helped me. I think business kind of kills the creative soul sometimes because you have to think of all these boring things that you don't really want to deal with. You just want to make things and talk to people. But learning the business side has I think that's why the last year has been such a lot has happened, because I've committed to learning and continuously, talking to people, asking questions, getting feedback on things. What else would I love to know? That my ideas are worthy of being something. I think you struggle so much thinking, even if everybody loves your products, so sometimes it's really hard to accept. Like, I don't know, I think I felt like a bit of a fraud for ages because I was just like, I've made them believe that this is something that is them. But after time goes by, you realize actually no, this is a quality product. People love it because of all the different elements that go into making it. And I think just believing in myself, believing that and when it comes to like men in business, I think men and myself, I think sorry, this is really bad explaining. I think I was always like silly Becky. I was kind of like always like, I don't really know, because I always wanted people to do things for me. So I'd be like, I don't really know, can you do it for me? And I think some of that carries on into like later on in life, and actually I don't feel like that was really ever part of my personality. I think it's something I allowed, and then obviously you get these men that you're in meetings with and they're looking at you, and when you start portraying this silly little girl, they prey on that, and they're like, well, your soul is mine now. Whereas like now I'm like, actually, I really, yeah, it's like I know my shit, I know what I'm up to, I know what I'm about, what I'm putting out. And I've sat in meetings with people with, you know, millions of pounds and just been like, actually, I don't want to use plastic. I don't want to do this thing. I don't want to do that thing. That's not what I'm about. And they're like, well, yeah, you know, but if you did this, if you did, and I'm like, actually, and I had a meeting like this the other week. And the guy kept asking, and he brought in the team, and so everyone was sitting there scrutinizing me while I spoke. And at first, he was quite, you know, oh, but you haven't thought about this, and you haven't thought. And I said, actually, I have. This is why I'm not doing this. This is why I'm not doing this, and this is why I'm not doing this. And in the end, they were like in the palm of my hand. Like,
And you're like, I don't want you.
Yeah, the whole team. It was amazing, and
Amazing.
I think they thought I was just going to take this deal that they were offering me, and I messaged them and I just said it's not for me at this time. You know, something I probably would have been worried about doing, because you always worry that you might not get that opportunity again, or, you know, but I feel like you've got to take back the power and like own everything that you are, and because there's only one you. And I think this is another thing that I would love to tell like myself at a younger age. There's only one me. Nobody else in this whole entire world can create what I can create. They can rip it off like some people have tried to, but they can't replicate something that's authentic and something that's made from blood, sweat and tears and a whole load of love, because ultimately if they're copying it, they're always going to be one step behind you, because they're just following, do you know what I mean, rather than ever being able to create something new. So
yeah. There's so many takeaways there, wasn't there? There was like, you've got to be authentic to yourself, trust your gut instincts, not be kind of coerced in a direction that doesn't like fit your values. There was trust in yourself because of your like, what's the way of saying that you said it? That's gone from my head now. The way you were saying, wow, that literally just went in and just popped straight back out.
My brain every day.
No, there was just so much juice in that. Like, thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. So, like, just thinking if anyone is listening that is, you know, really struggling to maybe cope with like a limiting health condition, and you know, they maybe really want to try and use it for good, use it for a positive, like, what would the wow, the whole vocab was just gone. But they want to use it for like a positive impact, right? So they want to actually do something positive with it, like, but they just have no idea where to start or anything like that. Like, would you have any kind of words of advice for that kind of viewer?
Like, I would say talk about what you're going through. I think for me, I had a thyroid lobectomy a few years ago, and I had this huge lump in my. I had to have it cut out, but they took half my thyroid with it. And so I went onto the internet to find examples of thyroid lobectomy and how long it took to recover, personal like blogs of people that have it done. And there were so few of them, and all the ones I read were really like scary. I was kind of terrified after reading them. Everybody had, you know, been out of action for like 8 weeks afterwards and whatever, and I was terrified. And so once I'd had my lobectomy done, and I had healed like after 3 weeks or whatever, I wrote a blog post about what I wish I had read before having the surgery. And so many people have found this before having it and messaged me afterwards and said thank you so much, because everything else I found was really scary. And I feel like maybe that's something we should be doing with any of our limiting things, is just talking about it more, because I feel like the only way we're ever going to really, for one, it to be accepted as like a norm, and like that it's not, especially if you're employed, I think it's quite hard, because your employer might not get it, or might think that, especially if it's like an autoimmune disease or something that's maybe not so visible. You know, just talk about it, talk to everyone about it. I just, you know, there's power in numbers, there's power in like speech, and, you know, talking about things. And also find what you're passionate about, because I think if you're going to do any kind of business or start anything, it's got to be something that is, especially if you're like zapped for energy and you're already feeling rubbish, if you're then trying to force yourself to do something that is not really a great passion of yours, but you think it's what you should be doing, you know, maybe just try and do something you're passionate about, even if it sounds wacky. Like, from my friends always still laugh the fact that I'm vegan, because I was a huge meat eater, like huge meat eater. And two, that I own a business, like, because I was just like always like pottering around through life, you know, making music and whatever. And, you know, it doesn't have to make sense at the time, but it's, you know, if you follow your passions and, you know, things that you love, quite often at some point it will make sense and it can be something really beautiful.
Yeah,
So,
I totally concur with that. And actually, as you were talking, I kind of remembered the point that I was trying to make that just like slipped out of my brain was when you were saying about feeling like an imposter as well. So in those situations when it's like, this just seems too silly and too wacky an idea for me to even entertain this, like, just like give it a try. You're never going to know until you try, and you're never going to learn about things like business and what you need to learn until you're in it.
definitely. And there's no failing. Like, you don't
Yeah.
fail, just learn. And like, I used to see those memes, you know, like where it's like, oh, it's not a failure, it's a lesson. And I was just like, I used to be like, oh, whatever. Like, you know, I don't want to fail with the shame. I can't deal with it. But now, like, I haven't had any major things like that yet, but I'm sure that I will. And I just I feel like I would be able to look at it now in a positive light and say, actually, this is what I was feeling when we were doing the crowdfunding. I think I probably spoke to it like loads, so, you know, how terrified I was, and like, you know, and then I just decided when it was getting towards the end and it didn't look like it was going to happen, obviously before it all turned around very quickly, I just kind of got to peace with it. And I just said, you know, like, if this does happen, then it's been a major learning curve for me. You know, I can look at it and take so much away from it. But also, I've seen how many people support me, you know, I had no idea that did. So, you know, there is always a lesson in it. Okay, you might feel a bit embarrassed for a while, whatever, but you just pick yourself up. Actually, I've got a friend. Sorry, I don't know how much time you've got, but
Yeah, no, you just let it flow. Let
yeah.
it flow. Let
Yeah.
it
I've
flow.
always got a friend it's either me or a friend that's done something. I've got a friend who had a business and it looked like it was going amazingly. Like, it was so cool. They had everything. They spent so much. They got loads of investment for it, like loads and loads and loads. And it was a shop and it was in Shoreditch, and it was like an ice cream thing, and it was all vegan. It was delicious. They had all these great toppings, and everyone was in awe of this place. It was the place to be. But after a short while, it closed down and it never really reopened. And it never really went on to be anything else. But what I really admire is the guy that did this. He owed so many people loads of money. He didn't know what he was doing, because he was just like, well, I put everything into that. And he picked himself up and he went and started another business, and then that business also didn't work out. And so now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really heart-wrenching watching you go, because you're so passionate and you're so great, and, you know, people really like him. And he's just started this third business, and they're all kind of similar, but you can see what he's learned from each one and how he's refined it, and you know, made it into a more perfect model of what it was. And now it's really, really working well. It's been going for quite a while, and you know, and it's, I would say, like, don't give up. And, you know, there's been many times where things have felt like they haven't worked out for me, or like they weren't gonna, but also it ended up being like a blessing that these things that I really wanted to happen at that time, it felt like everything to me, and then they didn't happen, and it was like, oh, or like, you know, or I couldn't make it happen because I didn't have enough time or whatever, and I felt a bit like hard done by. And then actually in the end, it was like, thank goodness it didn't work out like that, because I probably wouldn't still be going, or you know. And I've got other friends who've taken investment really, really early, and at that time, or like businesses that had started out at a similar time to mine, they took investment, and I was like, oh gosh, I'm going so slowly, like, you know. 4 years in, I haven't taken the investment, and it's only now we're getting into a kitchen. But actually, I've watched all these businesses that took investment very early. Once you've spent all that money and you've given away enough of your company, it's really hard to then make it work when you haven't got much left to play with. So sometimes the turtle just plodding along is,
slow and steady wins the race.
I am the turtle. I'm the tourist.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, Bex. That's going to be the blog post title, by the way.
Love
it. Amazing. Oh my God, there are so many like truth bombs and juice in that. Thank you so much, Bex. Like, I would love to let people know now, like, how people can find you, how they can get their mush around your pots, and like, how can I find you? Where are you? What all the deets?
So, Instagram, which is kind of like my main thing, is at BexFast, which is BEXFAST, and then _ and or by email, bex@bexfast.com or hello@bexfast.com. We have many email addresses, and then the website is bexfast.com. So you type in Bex,
Google Bexfast, and you'll find Bex.
Definitely, and the shop is just bexfast.com. So, and we deliver across the UK. So.
Amazing. That's so cool. And yeah, that actually has only been kind of not recent now, I guess, but in the time that like we've been connected online, I know when you made that transition into like going nationwide as well. And it was just like, oh my God, I can get one.
I know, absolutely insane. Because I actually didn't think that was going to happen. I couldn't work out how to scale the business because it was like me just doing deliveries around London. It always just felt a bit too far, a little bit too real, and then once we did it, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. It is. And like, when I see the packages going, they're like going to Scotland, going to Wales, going to Liverpool, going to here, and I'm like,
everyone's really cool.
I love seeing pictures and we like pictures of them eating it. It's great.
Amazing. Well, anyway, everyone that's watched, I hope you've enjoyed all those nuggets that Bex has shared with us today. And we'll see you next week, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.